What happens when royalty forgets that they're only a guest on someone else's show? When privilege crashes headfirst into reality on live TV, and every second of it is caught on camera for the world to see. It took less than 40 seconds for one guest to go from smiling confidently for the cameras to being escorted off stage, turning what was supposed to be a normal interview into one of the most shocking moments in talk show history. But before we dive into this unbelievable meltdown, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now, because we're uncovering the darker side of royalty, pulling back the curtain on celebrity entitlement, and showing you the footage they never wanted you to see. Stick around until the end and share your thoughts about this outrageous moment, because what you're about to hear will leave you stunned. Let's go back to that night. The Graham Norton Show, one of the most popular and respected talk shows on television. The audience is full, the lights are shining bright, and everyone's buzzing with excitement. Graham Norton, the charming and quick-witted host loved by fans all over the world, is sitting in his famous red chair. He's calm, smiling, and ready for another fun night of interviews. The guest walking out is Meghan Markle. The crowd cheers as she steps onto the stage wearing an elegant designer outfit that probably costs more than most people's yearly salary. She waves and smiles, that perfect practiced smile, and then takes her seat beside Graham. Everything looks fine, normal even, but there's something about the atmosphere that feels off. You can sense it. Something isn't right. Graham starts off as he always does, warm and polite. So lovely to have you here tonight. How are you doing? He asks with that familiar, genuine tone. Meghan looks at him and pauses just slightly before replying. I'm doing well, Graham. Thank you for having me. Her voice sounds polite, but there's a sharpness to it, almost as if she's doing him a favor by being there. Still, Graham keeps the energy friendly. We're thrilled you're here. Now, I have to ask, you've been in the public eye for quite some time now. How do you handle all that attention? And that's when things begin to change. Meghan straightens up and her expression shifts. You know what, Graham? That's actually a very insensitive question to ask someone who's been through what I've been through. The audience goes completely silent. You could hear a pin drop. Graham raises his eyebrows slightly but stays calm. I'm sorry if that came across the wrong way, he says kindly. I was just curious about your experience. Curious, Meghan repeats, her voice now cold and sharp. Is that what we're calling invasive questions these days? Curiosity? Graham adjusts in his seat, still smiling but clearly trying to keep the situation relaxed. Well, I think our audience would love to hear your perspective. That's what we do here. We have conversations. Conversations? Meghan repeats with a small laugh that doesn't sound pleasant. Graham, let me tell you something about conversations. Real conversations happen between equals. Do you understand what I'm saying? The camera cuts to the audience, and you can see people exchanging wide-eyed looks. Graham clears his throat. I'm not sure I follow, he says carefully. We're just chatting like I do with all my guests. All your guests? Meghan says, crossing her arms. And how many of your guests have had their entire lives torn apart by the media? How many have lived under the kind of scrutiny I've faced? Actually, Graham replies gently, many of my guests have faced intense public pressure. It's something we talk about quite often, but Meghan waves a hand dismissively. Please, Graham, don't compare my situation to some actor getting a bad review. What I've been through is completely different, and frankly, I don't think you're qualified to talk about it. Now the tension is thick. Graham's jaw tightens just a little, but he stays professional. I'm not trying to compare anyone's experiences. Everyone's journey is unique. Exactly, Meghan snaps. So maybe you should show some respect and recognize that. I absolutely respect you, Graham says. That's why you're here. On my show. Your show, Meghan repeats, her tone turning sharp again. You keep saying that. Your show, your questions, your audience. Has it ever occurred to you that maybe people tuned in tonight to see me, not you? The audience gasps, an audible reaction that fills the room. Graham looks genuinely surprised for a brief second, but quickly regains his composure. Well, I think people tuned in to see both of us have a nice conversation. A nice conversation? Meghan mocks. Is that what this is? Because from where I'm sitting, it feels more like an interrogation. I've only asked 2 questions, Graham points out calmly. Both fairly standard ones. Meghan leans forward, pointing her finger. Don't you dare make me feel like I'm being difficult. I came here as a courtesy to you. Do you understand that? A courtesy? Graham repeats, nodding slowly. And I appreciate you being here. But maybe we should take a breath and start again. Start over? Meghan says loudly. Why should I start over? Why don't you start over and learn how to interview someone of my level? That word, level, echoes through the studio. Everyone hears it. Graham hears it. The audience hears it. Graham remains calm, but his patience is clearly being tested. I've been doing this for many years, he says evenly, and I've interviewed everyone from Oscar winners to world leaders. I treat every guest with the same respect. The same respect, Meghan says, standing up abruptly. That's the problem, Graham. I'm not everyone else. The studio is frozen. People in the audience are covering their mouths. Graham slowly stands too, keeping his tone even. Please, let's sit down and continue talking. No, Meghan says firmly. You don't seem to understand who you're speaking to. I've been on the cover of every major magazine. I have influence you couldn't dream of. And you sit there with your little note cards and think you can treat me like some nobody. Now, Graham's expression hardens. I think there's been a misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding, Meghan cuts him off. You thought you could control this interview. But guess what? I control my own narrative now. This is my show, Graham says firmly. And on my show we have respectful conversations. Polite? Meghan laughs bitterly. That's the bare minimum, Graham. I deserve more than the bare minimum. What exactly do you want? Graham asks, his voice slightly raised now. I want you to recognize that having me here is a privilege for you, Meghan declares. I could be anywhere else right now, but I chose to be here. And this is how you treat me? I welcomed you. I asked normal questions, Graham says. I don't understand what I did wrong. That's the problem, Meghan shouts. You don't understand. You have no idea what it's like to be me. Then help me understand, Graham says gently. That's what we're here for, to talk. To talk? Meghan turns toward the crowd. Do any of you know what it's like to have your privacy invaded every day? To have lies printed about you constantly? The audience is silent. Someone coughs awkwardly. Nobody here is judging you, Graham says softly. We're just here to listen. My story is mine to tell, Meghan says sharply. Not because you scheduled me into your time slot. You agreed to come, Graham reminds her. I agreed before I realized how hostile this environment would be, Meghan fires back, where I'm expected to perform for entertainment. I don't think asking questions is hostile, Graham says calmly. Stop saying that, Meghan yells. Stop saying you treat me like everyone else. I am not everyone else. The camera catches a producer panicking in the background, whispering into a headset. Graham sighs. Maybe we should take a commercial break. Of course you would, Meghan says with a sarcastic smile. Running away when it gets tough. I'm not running away, Graham replies, voice now firm. I'm trying to reset. I don't need to reset, Meghan insists. You invited me here to make yourself look good, and now you're upset because I'm not playing along. That's not what this is, Graham says, visibly frustrated. I invited you because my audience wanted to hear from you. But if you're going to continue disrespecting me and them, then maybe this wasn't a good idea. Disrespectful? Meghan exclaims. You're the one being condescending. I've only been professional and courteous, Graham says evenly. Your idea of professional is my idea of insulting, Meghan shoots back. Graham looks at her, exhausted but calm. Then I apologize if you felt that way. That's because you're not listening. Meghan shouts. You're too busy planning your next question, your next joke, your next viral moment. What are you saying then? Graham asks softly. Because right now all I hear is that you're angry. But I don't know why. I'm angry because I'm tired, Meghan says, her voice shaking. Tired of being treated like an object? I know you're human, Graham says kindly. I've never said otherwise. But you expect me to sit here and perform, she continues. Smile for the cameras, be charming, share something personal. I'm done doing that. Okay, Graham says, nodding. But you did agree to an interview. On my terms, Meghan interrupts. But this is my show, Graham reminds her quietly. So the terms were clear when you agreed. Meghan stares at him. You know what? You're right. This is your show, and I don't need to be here another second. She starts walking away. Wait,